Okay, so this is part 2 of chapter 9. The first part was abruptly cut off when my computer suddenly decided to reboot. So I'm switching from PC to Mac, and this is now being recorded on my Mac because it's a little bit more stable of a product. And we're going to continue with chapter 9. So I was talking about structures follow strategy. So a new strategy is created. A new administrative problems may emerge due to this new strategy, and then a new structure may have to be developed. So economic performance could decline as this new problem, persists and develops. So a new appropriate structure is invented, and hopefully profits return to its previous level. So this is just a case of where you need to understand that the structure usually follows the strategy. So when the strategy is employed, the structure has to change around with it. We're talking business structure to make sure that the strategy is successful. Okay, so there are 3 stages of corporate development. You have the simple structure, which is very flexible and dynamic. Think of it as sort of a one-person or small company operation. But then you may have a functional structure where the entrepreneur or the single person calling all the shots in a very simple structure is replaced by a more formalized team of managers who work in the functional areas, finance, accounting, marketing, operations, and they replace the smaller company-sized entrepreneur moving into a larger company. Then as the company gets even bigger, it moves into the divisional structure where managers are going to be more focused on particular product lines. And there's a decentralization of decision-making. So decision-making isn't made so much at the very top level. It's brought back down to the managers and more divisional levels. And then, and then beyond that, there could be SBU, which are going to be different business units. And these business units are going to have a different type of structure, like a matrix or a network structure, which is a little bit more complex. We'll go over that in a minute. Okay, so blocks to changing stages. So some blocks can be internal. It could be a lack of resources within the company to facilitate the change, a lack of ability in its personnel, or just a refusal of top management to delegate or want to change the structure. There could be external factors, economic conditions, where the economy is changing or going through recession, just not the right time to make a drastic change in structure. A labor shortage as far as the new talent you may need, or a lack of just growth in the marketplace. Okay, so other blocks to change for entrepreneurs could be loyalty to comrades. So you may not want to, you may have friends you're working with, and you may not want to replace them with other managers. That could be a tricky situation. Task-oriented. So if you are, very task-oriented type of, your focus on the job is critical, but turns into an excessive attention to detail, and you really can't see the bigger picture, this is going to block your need for change. Single-mindedness, where you have one particular idea, about the company or product, and that's all you focus on. You really can't see the broader picture. Or working in isolation, where you're kind of isolated and you don't really get any additional information or support from peers about what's really happening beyond what you're working on. Okay, so the organizational life structure, organization goes through from the very beginning to the end of the organization. We have what we call these 5 stages. So in the first stage is sort of birth. The idea comes out. You concentrate on a niche, and you're very focused on entrepreneurial type of structure. Then in stage 2, there's more growth. You develop more of a horizontal or vertical growth. We talked about that in the previous chapter about vertical and horizontal chains. And you bring in the functional management, finance, accounting, marketing, operations to run the management. Stage 3, you're pretty big, you're mature, maybe a conglomerate, or you're looking to decentralize. It's getting too big, so you decentralize into more divisional compartments or profit centers. Stage 4, the industry starts to decline. The organization, trying to hold on to profits, trying to maximize strategies to increase or keep the profits. And there's sort of structural surgery, or you're selling off bits and pieces or trying to change. And then stage 5 is real death, liquidation or bankruptcy, and just a closing of the company. Now, companies can last hundreds and hundreds of years before stage 4 or 5 actually hit. So it's really about staying in stage 3 and not really getting to decline. So stage 3 is key. That's where you want to stay. That's where you want to develop new products, expand your business, and keep growing and moving forward like that shark. Now, a matrix structure is a different type of structure. It's a little bit more confusing, but its functional and product forms are combined simultaneously at the same level of the organization. So sometimes it's better in a picture. So here we have a picture, and what we're really seeing is this matrix structure where you got your top management at the very top controlling everything, but we're letting project managers run sort of division. So the project manager will go, they'll manage the manufacturing, the sales, the finance, and the human resources. So you could have finance broken up into 5 smaller departments, all sort of running with these project managers. And that's more of a matrix or a grid type of structure. And that works for computer, a lot of computer companies do this. Computer software will have more of a matrix structure. It could be, a Google has more of, or Facebook can have more of a matrix structure. And it's a more progressive, a more expansive type of structure. Now, the conditions for a matrix structure includes when ideas need to be cross-pollinated through many products or projects. If there's a scarcity of resources, where you're forced to work together more tightly like that, or the ability to process information and to make decisions needs to be improved. So these are conditions where you just have a company where things just aren't working right, or you're not getting the synergies, and a matrix structure may actually be more beneficial to move into. Now, the phases of the matrix structure, you can be a temporary cross-functional task force that involves into sort of a product or brand management team, and then those brand management teams become fully functional teams, and that's your mature matrix structure is developed. Now, a network structure is a little bit more confusing. It's a little bit more rarer. It's an elimination of all the in-house functions. So everything is outsourced, and you become more of a virtual organization, they may say, where you're composed of groups or series of projects or collaborations that are linked together through a non-traditional network of control or management. So it's really this free-flowing sort of companies able to scale up or scale down very quickly because they're outsourcing all their production, their design, their research, their main functionalities, and you just have sort of a loose home-based group of managers sort of organizing, facilitating all the logistics of this. So this is sort of I think a rare organization that just it evolves, particularly for certain type of companies where they need that flexibility. So it could be a very fast-moving, like electronics or software, something that's very fast-moving, changing, very innovative. They need to have very flexible a system that can really deal with extreme growth or contraction of an industry as the circumstances change. Okay. Now, a network structure could look sort of like you may have outsourced your packages, your designs, your suppliers, distribution, your manufacturers, but you have a corporate headquarter or a broker, sort of like the liaison between all these different groups. So it's a very small corporate core that's stable, but it's utilizing all these additional resources to get the job done. So a cellular or modular structure, this is composed of particular cells or self-management teams that are autonomous little business units that can operate alone or interact with other elements of other business units of the company. And so this is, again, another sort of like a network structure, but it's more cellular, like cell towers are grouped in different areas to make complete coverage. So a cellular module will be with a group of managers or a business team in one particular area, providing coverage for the area. So it could be sort of like managers are giving a particular control, a particular process or location, and then they're self-managed. They're autonomous business units that they operate alone and they're more nimble. They can make decisions more quickly. Now this is, has advantages and disadvantages. Disadvantage is that the company can't work together in total too easily. But the advantage could be that it helps to foster more entrepreneurial type of spirit for these small businesses. These small business units act almost like small businesses. So they can be very nimble, very quick, very entrepreneurial like to develop, design new products and new structures. And sometimes these cellular modular structures may develop a hit product, and that could move on to a bigger business unit somewhere else, and they'll just have to focus on new products. So a firm is focused on a rapidly changing marketplace where the rapid products are coming and going really quick, or there's a certain amount of service innovation that's held to a particular region or product, then this cellular structure may be more appropriate for some businesses. So re-engineering, this is a step where businesses step back, they look at the total process of the company, and they achieve a major change, and hopefully a gain in cost or service or time. So re-engineering is really a rethinking or redesign of how the company does business. So this could be part of a turnaround strategy, but a re-engineering is really, hey, things aren't working the way we're doing it. We got to rethink the whole package and think out of the box and recreate something and be much more useful and profitable. So if we're going to re-engineer, we have to organize around the outcomes, not necessarily the tasks. We want to say, where do we want to be? We want a car that runs on water. Well, that's a little bit too much of a re-engineering, but you want to really think about the outcome. And then you want to think about who's going to perform the process. So who's going to use the output of the process? And you want to think of a new way of production or information or processing work that's going to result in real work that produces useful information. And so the whole re-engineering is really just thinking about what the problem is. Maybe the problem is manufacturing is too expensive, too many legacy costs, or the way the product is used or built is just not sustainable with the cost of components, and just a rethinking of how the product's designed, how the solution is developed for the customer, and just coming up with a whole new way of doing things that's completely different than anything before. And generally when companies get to a point of it's a necessity to survive, this is when they will really pursue these principles of re-engineering. So maybe they'll be thinking about parallel activities instead of integrating their results, decision points, where the work is to be performed, the build the control into the process, or how they're going to capture information at the source or at the vendor. So these are just a lot of buzzwords, but it's really, again, rethinking everything, just sort of like saying, forget everything we did in the past. Let's rethink the way we're going to make this product and we're going to sell it. So, maybe it's sort of like an Avon saying, forget selling it in stores or retailing it in stores and selling to consumers through a department store, and let's rethink our product and maybe we sell it directly door to door. And okay, so door to door sales isn't as what they used to be. What's another way we could sell the product? Maybe representatives that sell it through the workplace or other party networks or things like that. So it's really a rethinking of when something stops working, it's time to reimagine the whole process. And that's basically the idea behind re-engineering. Now, Sigma 6 is a management idea that was popularized in the 80s, and it was made by Motorola. And it's basically an analytical method for achieving near perfection in production. So Sigma 6 is mostly associated with production, and we're going to emphasize reducing product variances and increasing quality and efficiency so that there's very little mistakes or scrap in the production process. So a lean Sigma 6, the removal of unnecessary steps and fixing that's remaining. So if you had, if it was 45 steps to make a bicycle, maybe we'll be able to cut out a certain amount of those steps or streamline or make things more efficient in a way that will help the company make more higher quality and lower cost products. So in the process of the Sigma 6, there are sort of 5 steps or which you think there would be 6 steps in Sigma 6, but there's actually only 5. So there's the define step where we're going to process where the results are poorer than average. So we're going to look for where the problems are. Then we're going to measure. So if you can measure it, you can manage it. So the process is determining about performance and measuring performance. Then analyzing where things went wrong, where the performance is falling down. Then improving, figuring out a way to eliminate or improve the error or problem, and then establish a control to prevent it from occurring again. So pretty straightforward. Now, job design to implement strategy. This is looking at individual tasks and trying to make the job more relevant to what the company needs and to its employees. So sometimes you could do a job in enlargement where you give the workers more of the same type of duties to perform, so it can combine tasks to to make the job a little bit more encompassing rather than just being the one person that puts a tire on the car every day. You're going to be involved in more aspects of the production or what your duties are. And then sometimes there's job rotation where you move workers through many different divisions or areas of the company so they get a better idea of how the whole company works. So you can give people, employees, so they're not so isolated in one division or one particular job. You move them around, give them different jobs, train them in different areas, and they become an expert in the bigger picture. And this sometimes helps to implement or make a strategy successful. So job characteristics, looking to define the job characteristics to improve the employee's motivation. So what about the job is really awful? What could be done to make the job a little bit more enjoyable, a little bit better? And just trying to define the characteristics of the job. So that way, later on, we could do a job enrichment where we're altering the jobs of these people to give them more autonomy or more control or more activities or more education. So together, the employee, hopefully you get an employee that's more capable, more satisfied, more successful, more functional, and better able to implement their strategy. So it's the idea of having a better employee is making the company better. And it's usually a very common strategy is because employees are sometimes the biggest strength of a company and the one aspect of the company that's overlooked the most. All right. So international strategies, if you want to have a multinational corporation, you have to develop into a multinational corporation, expand throughout the world, and this is going to be a change in strategy for the management. So rather than focusing locally, they're focusing globally, and they have to have the decision-making ideas in a more global type of fashion. So if you want to have a strategic fit, sometimes you need an alliance with partners. And so your partners have to come together with the right values and vision of what you're trying to do. And the alliances, have to have, the businesses have to be aligned as well, and the corporate and functional strategies have to be similar. The alliance is important to, make sure you partner the top management between the two different companies together so that they can be both responsible or mutually dependent for achieving these objectives. So if you're going to make a strategic fit of having a strategic alliance with other partners or other businesses, you have to make sure that there's a good marriage, that you sort of understand what you're getting into and where you're moving towards. So if international development of a company, the first stage is the domestic company is established. Then the domestic company starts to export their products. Then the domestic company starts to work and develop an international division. And then it becomes a multinational company and with a multi-domestic emphasis, which means that the multi-domestic, company's going to exist in many different nations, but it's going to focus on the products in that nation, but it's all part of a bigger company. And step 5, multinational corporation with a global emphasis. So this way, now the company is becoming a total world company with a global emphasis, not so much a multi-domestic. So multi-domestic would be like making products specifically for Germany, specifically for France, specifically for Africa, China, Mexico. Now in step 5, you're just making a global brand product for everybody. So these are different areas of the stages of development. So centralized or decentralized. A centralized would be looking at the products or the geographical area and having one command center, one control center that's centralized to manage all the product lines and to implement this strategy. And decentralizing is really breaking this apart and making smaller management centers that are going to do these tasks in a more local level to achieve particular goals. So if a geographic area structure could kind of look like this, where we have the board of directors and president, and there the president's overseeing the research development and the corporate staff, but then we have different operations for US, Europe, Latin America, Africa, Asia, and then underneath those different groups, you could have different product groups. If you have Asia is a very large continent, you may have different subgroups of Asia and different product groups. So that would be more of a geographic area structure for multinational. Okay. All right, so that ends the lecture today. This is part 2 of chapter 9, and I look forward to seeing you in chapter 10. Thank you.